Welcome to today's Explainer. We're grabbing our markers and heading straight to the whiteboard because today we are going to master the English vocabulary of the human life cycle, and I mean literally from cradle to grave.
Here is our lesson plan for today. We'll start with a quick welcome, jump into the beginning of life, then move on to old age and funerals. After that, we'll cover contexts and registers, do a bit of review and practice, and finish up with a final vocabulary revision.
Okay, Section 1. Welcome to the lesson.
So, we're going to learn over 40 different terms today. Why so many? Well, because you really need to know exactly how to speak appropriately in medical, formal, and deeply personal situations. These are life's most important milestones, and having the right words to navigate them makes absolutely all the difference in connecting with others.
Let's get right into it with Section 2, the beginning of life.
Let's look at a very strict grammar rule for the word expecting. When a woman is pregnant, we say she is expecting a baby. The golden rule here is that in this context, expect is only ever used in the continuous expecting form. So you would say, Helena and her sister are both expecting. You would literally never just say, they expect.
Let's map out a quick timeline of those 9 months. It all kicks off at week 1 with conception, which is when an egg is fertilized and the embryo implants itself. By week 8, the developing baby is known as a fetus, and it's being fed through the mother's placenta. And finally, right around week 40, the mother goes into labor, meaning the actual physical process of birth begins.
Now, you've probably noticed there's often a difference between everyday English and medical English. You'll frequently hear mothers talk about the everyday term, the womb, and notice that silent B, by the way, womb. That's the organ where the baby develops. But a doctor will use the much more clinical term uterus to describe the exact same organ. It's the same thing, we're just using a different register of speaking.
Of course, sometimes mothers cannot conceive naturally. To conceive simply means to become pregnant. If this happens, they might use fertility drugs to help things along, or maybe a lab process called IVF, that stands for in vitro fertilization. Because of that laboratory setting, babies born this way are sometimes informally called test tube babies.
Let's walk through the actual sequence of birth vocabulary. First, the mother goes into labor naturally. Or if she needs medical help to get the process started, we say she is induced. Next, a midwife, that's a medically trained professional, helps the mother give birth. However, if an operation is needed, a surgeon delivers the baby via caesarean section.
Moving along to the other end of the cycle, Section 3, Old Age and Funerals.
Let's explore some incredibly common terms here. People today often live to a ripe old age, which just means living for a very long time. An elderly person receiving a state pension is called a pensioner. As they get older, they might move into sheltered accommodation, which is a type of special housing where care staff also live. And finally, when we're referring to someone who has died, we use the word late. For instance, you might fondly mention your late father's sister.
When we discuss an elderly person's mental state, knowing your tone is absolutely crucial. Saying someone has all her wits about her is a really positive idiom. It means she is thinking clearly and reacting quickly. On the negative side, the medical term for a memory illness is dementia. Now you must be extremely careful with words like dottery, meaning physically weak, and especially gaga, meaning unable to think clearly. These are highly informal and can actually be very offensive compared to the medical terms.
When a loved one dies, the family is bereaved, and they are in mourning. That's the state of expressing deep sadness. Usually, the body is placed in a coffin, the box designed for the deceased. After the funeral, friends and family often gather for a wake to celebrate the person's life together. Later on, they might read the will, which is a legal document stating exactly what happens to the person's possessions.
Let's quickly compare the two main types of funerals. A burial is the traditional service where the dead body is buried down in the ground. On the other hand, a cremation is a service at a crematorium where the body is burnt. The remains from that are called ashes, and many people ask for their ashes to be scattered or spread around, maybe out at sea or in a favorite park.
All right, Section 4, Contexts and Registers. You see, context completely dictates our word choice in English. For formal sympathy, we offer condolences, saying something like, please accept my condolences. Informally with friends, we might just say, sorry to hear of your loss. As euphemisms, which are softer, gentler ways to say someone died, we use phrases like pass away or pass on. But check this out. Phrases like at death's door or on your last legs are super informal. In fact, we often reserve them entirely for broken machines, like a dying laptop.
Written English has its very own distinct registers too. Journalists writing in a newspaper want to grab your attention, so they use dramatic words. Dead people are fatalities. People who died perished, and those violently killed are slaughtered. Legal English is a whole different ballgame. Lawyers use precise, highly formal terms. The dead person is the deceased. To leave something to someone in a will is to bequeath it, and to receive it is to inherit. And if someone dies without making a will at all, well, legally they die intestate.
Let's see what you've remembered. Section 5. Review and practice.
Okay, let's look at a quick fill-in-the-blank question. My old laptop is broken again. I think it is on its last. Based on that very informal register we literally just learned about, what word completes this phrase when we're talking about a dying machine?
You guessed it, the answer is legs. On its last legs is the absolute perfect informal idiom here. Now let's test your medical vocabulary with a quick multiple-choice question. Which of these is the correct clinical term for the womb? Is it A, placenta, B, embryo, or C, uterus?
Spot on. The answer is C, uterus. The uterus is the medical term, whereas the placenta feeds the baby and the embryo is the very earliest stage of development.
And finally, Section 6, Final Vocabulary Revision. Language truly is the roadmap of a culture, especially when we're navigating life's most profound and challenging moments. From expecting and midwife right at the very beginning to dealing with dementia or offering your formal condolences at the end. So, here's my challenge to you before we go. Write down 3 sentences using your brand new vocabulary right now. Put them into practice. But as you do, ask yourself this. As medicine and society inevitably evolve, what entirely new words do you think we'll have to invent to describe these universal human milestones in the future? Keep learning, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next Explainer.